Tom, we can, I think, fade the music and let's get the program going for tonight.
Yeah, this is I mean, this is so exciting. Everybody, welcome to Masters of the Fly season 3. And uh, as I said a minute ago, we just can't believe, all the participants who wanted to be part of this. Lou and I are really humbled by all you folks out there who've been tuning in for 3 years. And if you haven't been tuning in for 3 years and you're just new to us tonight, we really are grateful for you all to be joining us. Tonight we're hosting the American Saltwater Guides Association, and we've got Tony and Blaine who are going to be with us. But let me briefly tell you all about Masters of the Fly. It's really not about mastery per se. It's more of a state of mind. It's really, we're a community of obsessed fly anglers and anglers in general. And we're trying to provide both the service and some entertainment all at the same time. So we really enjoy this. Our planning team, Clay, Tom, I'm going to thank Lou also, because boy, we all work tirelessly to put on a good show for everybody. And we truly feel blessed. Very briefly, I just want to mention our schedule. I got to pick up my phone so I get this right. Tonight's the American Saltwater Guides Association. On February 26th, we have a really exciting show as well. We've got Andy Mill, and he'll be talking about tarpon fishing and his history from the U.S. ski team to maybe one of the greatest anglers of all time. We have an evening with Britta Fordyce on March 12th. And if you've never seen Britta, you should go to her Instagram page. She is a phenomenal fly tyer.
Hey, actually, Tom and Clay, if you can put up the program now, that would be awesome.
Yeah. On March 26th, we have two of the great writers in the world of fly fishing. We've got Steve Ramirez and Ted Williams. Steve is just a wonderful writer, and he writes about fishing, not necessarily from the perspective of fishing, but from the perspective of personal enlightenment. And Ted Williams, one of the great outdoor writers. We also have on April 16th, Gunnar Brommer. Wow, that's going to be incredibly exciting, and watch him tie some massive flies. And then on April 30th, Lou, I'm going to throw this to you for a second so you can explain it, but we are going to be doing some virtual fly casting.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this, and I really hope all of you join and bring others on board for this. So some of you who have met me and David and have fished with us have seen us use an app called OnForm, which is a iPhone app that lets you do sort of video analysis. It was designed really for analyzing golf swings and for pitchers and for baseball players. We've been using it increasingly to help to diagnose and analyze fly casting. We're going to have Mark Sadati, who is many of you know is a sort of a legend, not only in the fly tying sort of business, but also as is a champion fly caster, and Gear Fisher, who is the originator and innovator behind the OnForm app. And we're going to ask all of you to submit videos of your fly casting. We'll send out a template for you to use. So we'll have a template with Mark casting, and then you can film a similar video. And we will then use the OnForm app and select a certain number of you for actual video analysis. I find it incredibly helpful. Hopefully you all will too. And I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, Lou and I diagnosed each other's casts over the summer, and we were just amazed at how accurate it was.
Like we cast in very different ways.
Differences. Yeah. I just want to throw a quick shout out to Tail Magazine, Trout Unlimited, Salty Fly Rodders of New York. Also, we'll be posting a list of the materials you'll need for both Gunner's Fly and Britta's Fly, and you'll be able to purchase that stuff through saltwaterflies.com. and we'll try to get those lists up as soon as we can, so you guys can all tie along. In with all that, I think it's time to throw the show over to Lou and the American Saltwater Guides
Yeah.
Association. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I'll see you at the bottom of the hour.
Awesome. Thanks, David. So I'm going to very quickly, so I can hand it over to our guests, logistics for night. So for tonight, you will see if you scroll down to the bottom that there should be a Q&A button. If you have questions during the presentation, please click on that button and put them in there. We will queue them up, and at the end of the half hour or so that Tony and Blane talk, we will moderate those questions. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions given the topic tonight, so please put those questions in the Q&A box. If you want to just ask your question live at the end, just hit, there's a raise hand button. If you click that, we'll get to you. We'll actually go through the raised hands first before we go through the Q&A. So if you have any trouble with that, just text us. We'll figure it out with you. And really, that's about it. I'm going to turn it over to Tony and Blane and the American Saltwater Guides Association. And the only thing I would just say is, as you know, someone like many of you who has been fishing as a recreational angler or coastal waters for the better part of 35, 40, 45 years, we've never had an advocate for our community before. And the American Saltwater Guides Association is in many respects an answer to a lot of our desire to have an organization that really represents our interests as recreational, coastal, light tackle, mostly catch and release anglers at a time where our fishery is under incredible duress. And Tony and Blane, they'll talk a little bit about themselves, but they're probably too modest to say what you all need to really hear, which is these are two of the best guides in the business, two legends in fly fishing and in angling in general. And for them to have committed themselves and dedicated their time to helping all of us preserve our fishery is something I hope you celebrate as much as we all do. This has been a challenging year on many levels, but also one of incredible accomplishment in fisheries management for all of us. So I'm really excited to hand the mic over to Tony and Blane from the American Saltwater Guides Association. So guys, take it away.
Glad I found the mute button there, Lou. I was on mute the whole time, so I wouldn't open my big mouth. So that was one heck of an intro from our friends over at Masters on the Fly. So I'm Tony Friedrich, policy director from the American Saltwater Guides Association. Blane is on here with me, and we're kind of going to tell our story a little bit, but I just wanted to give a background for those who aren't familiar with the Guides Association. Tom, can you hit that next slide for me, buddy? So, you know, who are we? We're a coalition of conservation-minded fishing guides, private anglers, and fishing-related businesses. So look, you know, I know it says guides in the name, and our board will always be made up of guides, but, you know, it's a big tent. So it doesn't really matter if you're just a private rec angler or you own some other fishing-related business. Our chairman owns Saltwater Edge, Peter Jenkins. We want to build a really big tent so everyone who kind of agrees with our philosophy and our view of management can come under it and find a home. So don't be scared away if it says the Guides Association. You know, just like you would step on our members' boats and trust them, it goes when you step off the boat too. You know, those same folks that you're fishing with are on our board or our members and helping guide us through kind of all these complicated issues with fisheries. And really the idea here is we want to create a unified voice for conservation and fisheries management. And when you add kind of our whole team up, it's a lot of experience. You know, I know I don't look it, but I'm not exactly a spring chicken anymore. And I've been doing this for pretty much my entire adult life. and you have a tendency to pick up a few things along the way. And our core values are really simple. Precautionary management, in the absence of knowing everything about a species, and the science of them, perfect stock assessments, it just doesn't happen in fisheries. And you could say we're very risk averse. Um, if you don't know something and you have all of these questions, you should probably be precautionary in your approach to managing these fish, because by and large, we're pretty darn efficient at catching things these days. And it all kind of funnels down into better business through conservation. I think for a long time, there's been a voice out there, that you hear a lot, in the charter for hire community, that says, if we can't keep these fish, we'll go out of business. And our message is a little bit different. If there's no fish in the water, we're going to go out of business. So, by and large, our clients are in it for the experience rather than filling the cooler. They certainly can keep fish, whenever they want, whenever it's legal, but it's more of an experience thing. So that the more fish that are out there, the better the fishing is, the more trips we're going to take, and the better it is for everyone. And we have this concept of managing for abundance, because you know, we fight over the last slice of the pizza constantly. And it kind of dawned on us years ago, why not just make the pie bigger instead of fight over the scraps. So that's kind of who we are and our core values. Do you want to go to the next slide, Tom? So before I kind of get into the accomplishments, I think it's important. Blaine's working with us a little bit at the Guides Association now, and his story is super similar to a lot of the folks who get involved. Blaine and I have been friends for longer than I care to even remember, and it goes all back to the days when kind of Lefty decided to take me and Blaine collectively under his wing and kind of mentor us in different ways. But Blaine called me probably 10 months ago, and he kind of said something to me that shook me a little bit. And it was his reasons why he started wanting to work with us. And I'll just let Blaine talk about that for a second. I'm sure you remember that conversation, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thanks for having me on tonight. As Tony said, we've known each other for a long time. Lefty Cray was a great friend of both of ours. He always was there for all of us, not just Tony and I, but pretty much everybody in the fishing community, especially the fly fishing community. And Lefty was for me instrumental in my career in fly fishing and fly design, and moving forward in my life as a guide, and trying to teach me how to do things, and always trying to tell me and kind of guide me in a way. I mean, I've been a guide for 32 years, but Lefty kind of put me in the right direction. As Tony would also attest, that he had no problem kind of putting you in your place when you needed it. And but also in the same way, kind of being a father figure, because I always called him the Godfather, because he'd been there, done that. He's seen the industry change. He's seen fisheries come and go. The big thing with Lefty was always be humble, try to teach what you know. Don't display your talent in a negative way. Always share your knowledge. And I've always tried to do that. And being a guide for, like I said, 30 some years, and Lefty kind of sharing with me all the different avenues I've kind of needed to take to have this long career that I've had, and make sure I was successful at it. Part of that was also to make sure the fisheries, not only the fishing and the industry, be better than it was before you were there. I think it's super important now, as I get later on in my career. And, might be lack of testosterone. I'm not as mad at the fish as I used to be, but, uh, I've been there, done that. I've seen a lot of cool stuff, but I've also seen things change in a negative way in my fisheries. And I reached out to Tony, about a year or so ago and talked to him. I was like, man, I feel like the next step in my career is trying to preserve the future of the fisheries, not only inshore in freshwater, but also in saltwater. Because, I've got a son who's 6 years old, and I'm just, it scares me to death for him not to be able to see the things I've seen and being able to experience that stuff. And he loves fishing, and I couldn't be more proud of that. But I also wanted him to be able to see the things that I've seen. And and I know Lefty would want us to do that, and I think he left us in a place where he might have foreseen us being able to work together in the future, which we are now. And I think Tony could obviously attest to that. I mean, a big part of what we're doing now is we're fighting an uphill battle. It's like we always talk about first downs, like getting 5 yards at a clip, and it's going to be a long game, but we're in it, and we're entrenched in this battle. And I just want to make sure that I give a lot more back than I ever received from fishing. I think that's super important. I think people, I think they take things for granted. I know I did. I used to have one of the best smallmouth fisheries that I've ever experienced in any of my travels. And now I've seen it decline to where it's almost embarrassing to go out and do it anymore. And I've seen the striped bass recover, and I've seen the fall of it. And, being able to travel in to different places in the country, but also in our country, which is obviously very proud to live in the United States. But you see things, that you see a trend no matter where you go, and we got to get on this, and Tony and I talk about it all the time, and I know he feels the same way I do. And as a guide, we're kind of the watchdogs of our fisheries, right? And that's kind of why it's called the ASGA, right? But it doesn't mean that. I mean, all of us as anglers are the watchdogs. I'd say the guides might be the canary in the coal mine, though. We kind of see it because we're out every day. Everybody else has jobs. But I couldn't be more proud to be associated with them, and I look forward to all the things that we're going to be doing in the future. We've got a lot of things cooking right now. That whole false albacore project and the redfish stuff coming up, and I know Tony could talk a little bit more about that, but don't want to ramble too much. Tony's got more of the science side of this.
Blane, I think it's interesting. Like, every person who comes to us, if you were checking boxes of like the top 5 things that they said, I think number one is, we participate in these fisheries and we have kids, and it's such a part of who we are. And we've seen it decline so much, let's say like in the last 20 years, that you really start thinking about, are my kids going to be able to do this, or are my grandchildren going to be able to do this? Because that's how bad it's getting. And we're talking coastwide stuff. You still have good days in certain areas, and I'm not disputing that, but I guess what that shows me is that there's hope when there's still these pockets of good fishing. That shows you that Mother Nature's pretty powerful, and it can come back if we let it. And I think that's a pretty good segue. I know Blane is super passionate about every fish he fishes for, but 2 in particular would be albies and redfish. And I kind of want to talk about what we did in 2022 here at the Guides Association. So I'll start with the albie project. And this is one of those things that you kind of grab a tiger by the tail. And a big part of my job isn't necessarily, sitting down and reading legislation constantly, or, fighting for stripers at the commission. A lot of it is looking at opportunity and taking advantage of it, or trying to look into the future and see what may be a problem for that precautionary management, because you don't always want to be in a situation where it's crisis management like we are with stripers right now. And so, when you look at a fish that really ties a huge portion of the coast and our membership together, those are going to be false albacore or little toonie. Our guides in Florida, Fish Forum, they're day savers in Florida. When they have a hard time locating, snook or tarpon or whatever else, they can, by and large, they can generally go to a reef and find some big albies. I mean, big ones. My gosh, most of them well over 10 pounds, and some of them just shockingly enormous. And then, it trickles all the way up to our guides in Cape Cod and even slightly north of there, who rely on albies for a couple of months out of the year. And when you look at a false albacore, it's not managed. So there's no size limit, there's no daily creel limit. We know nothing about the science. And it kind of paints you in a corner, because we're in a situation where we can't lose another fish. Our membership cannot lose 2 months or 3 months out of their guiding calendar, and albies are incredibly important to us. So when you're kind of faced with all this, you say, well, we got to start getting science on these things. So we drummed up some money. When you know nothing about a fish, anything that you can bring to the table is a huge benefit. So we started an acoustic tagging project, and that's basically where you surgically implant a little thing about that big, probably about the size of your thumb, into the albie, and it makes a ping, and that it's a unique identifier for that fish. And when the fish swims next to a buoy, they'll hang these receivers off a buoy. Consider it like a cell tower. I could build a cell tower, and maybe 15 different companies would rent space on that cell tower, and might be one for cell service, might be something else for weather monitoring, who knows. But they take these buoys and they can hang a whole bunch of stuff. They can hang a hydrophone to listen to whales. They can hang these receivers, weather monitoring stuff. So when an albie swims past one of these buoys pretty close, it pings. So we tagged, somewhere around like 65 albies in Nantucket Sound. These are preliminary results. I'm kind of bound by an agreement with the New England Aquarium not to share too much of it, but we had a 90% return rate that I can share. 90% of the albies that we tagged pinged, and that, let me tell you, that kept me up at night. Because they're pretty, these are pretty delicate fish. These are not redfish. We didn't know if every single one of them was going to die, because we're shoving this thing in them, stitching them up. I mean, the guys at New England Aquarium built this contraption out of a traffic cone to stick their heads in it and flush water down them. And I'm watching this and I'm going, my God, every single one of them is going to die. And we got a 90% return rate. I'll share like 2 other stats. The Rockstar albie of the bunch, in a period between mid-July and like October 30th, a little sucker pinged 622 times on 17 different receivers. The best 2-week period we had out of that 90% return rate, about 60 fish, we had 4,955 pings just in Nantucket Sound. So we're really excited, because by the time summer rolls around, we're going to start picking up information from other science institutions, other science institutions up and down the coast, whether it's a university or another aquarium. They have those same receiver arrays. So what we're hoping is we'll actually be able to track those albies wherever they go, in relation to the coast. And then hopefully we can see them when they re-enter Nantucket Sound, start getting a little migrational pattern for them. So here's a real cool thing. We start the albie tagging project. We didn't know what the response was going to be. We got a lot of people, some people telling us we were stupid because, it's an albie, who cares about albies? And And we got a phone call one day, and one of our members, Vinny Canilano, had a client who's a DNA researcher at Cornell. He connected us with him, and 24 hours after the conversation started, we embarked on our first DNA study for false albacore. Incredible. And it just started snowballing and going, and then we started spaghetti tagging for them up and down the coast. And the support of the community has been unbelievable, and we're going into year 2 of the Albie project. So big accomplishment. Striped bass rebuilding. I would equate this to a war of attrition. So Mike, you're going to steal my thunder. I just saw Mike's thing come up because he said, what about bonito? And I got a story for you, Mike, and you're not going to believe it. So hang on to your bonnet, buddy, because we got a little bonito news for what we're looking at for 2023. But look, this is going to be a slog, and as much as I hate to say this, we're going to need y'all in May, because we're going to be looking at mortality numbers, and we're probably there's a decent chance we're no longer rebuilding the stock of striped bass, because in looking at the numbers, the fishing mortality skyrocketed in 22 so far. So we're gonna need y'all again. And I hate to say that after the disappointing meeting last week. So other accomplishments in 2022: redfish in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. We're engaging on both of those species. I know this is a Northeast group, but give it like 10 years, you'll be catching redfish because they're marching north at a pretty good clip. Y'all will love them, man. You'll love them. You haven't lived until you've been in a pumpkin patch of like 5,000 45-inch redfish just swallowing bunker with reckless abandon. It looks like radioactive bullfrogs. Just slurping up, slamming into the side of your boat, eating menhaden. But they both have their problems too. The redfish in the Atlantic, because we don't kill anything over 27 inches. They have no idea what the adult population is. So I'm going to get into where we're going in 23 with that. And in the Gulf of Mexico, the stock assessment just came out. And it's probably worse than the striped bass stock assessment. Right now, if they take a 30% reduction on harvest, they'll rebuild by 2051. So yeah, we also on Capitol Hill, we testified on huge piece of federal legislation in House Natural Resources. We submitted countless letters, worked with our friends on Capitol Hill to try to push good legislation, introduce good legislation. That's where the rubber meets the road for our federal managed fisheries. And, we're doing nothing but strengthening our position there, making new ties and making the old ones stronger. So do you want to go to the next one, Tom? I want to save a lot of time for Q&A. So, okay. So the outlook for 2023, and you really, we kind of break our activities down into advocacy and science. It's funny on the next slide. I did kind of like it said science, education, advocacy, and I'm like, holy mackerel, there's an acronym, huh? See, but it's what we do, and it's a little bit of a different template than a lot of the groups out there. So much like the Albie project, if the science doesn't exist, we're going to go out there and raise funds and get the science done. And then we're going to educate people on the science, and then we're going to advocate for better regulations and policy on what we learned. You spend your whole life hearing there's no budget, you get kind of sick of it. So thanks to our awesome sponsors, our brand partners, you look at who sponsored the Albie project with Costa and Sims and Van Stahl and Old Main Outfitters. These companies just stepped up cheeky. They just gave us money to complete this science. It's pretty awesome watching the community rally around it. So our outlook for 2023 and advocacy obviously is precautionary management. We're going to stay lasered focused on striped bass rebuilding. We're going to work through these redfish assessments, and we're going to work on the reform of the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, because, you know, when you manage billion-dollar industries and you're not accountable for your decisions and you don't have to follow your own rules, it creates a lot of problems. So that's really going to be where our laser focus is, and it has been so far on 2023. On the science side, we're really excited to launch the Albie project in year 2 with expanded research, and we're going to expand our DNA work on multiple projects on multiple species. So we're looking at doing eDNA, which is environmental DNA. You can basically take water samples and look at what's in that water and get a good idea of what's swimming around through DNA that, you know, sheds off of crabs, fish, shrimp, you name it. Basically, we're talking, you know, fish poop, pee, slime, little bits of scale, something that anything that can carry their DNA. Our guys at Cornell can look at water samples and tell you basically what swam by in the last 24 to 48 hours. It's pretty cool stuff. And Mike, are you ready? I hope you're listening, you crazy board member from Connecticut. So we are going to expand the Albie project. That expanded research is going to include DNA for Atlantic bonito next year. Between me and just my friends. So me and just my friends on the show here. Please don't tell anyone. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't say this unless it was okay. We're very concerned about the average size of a bonito and inserting an acoustic tag into them. We don't know what that would do to the fish, and nobody's ever done it before. So one of the ways that we can learn a lot about bonito is get those fin clips from them and understand if it's one stock, if it's multiple stocks. What we learned from the Albie project, is it is one. The science that we have right now is telling us it is one stock on the East Coast. We've done a ton of research on Atlantic bonito, and there's been a pretty good chunk of DNA work done on them in the Mediterranean, and there are actually several different subspecies of Atlantic bonito in the Mediterranean and European waters. So we can take fin clips DNA, see if they match up to the ones in Europe, see if they are separate stocks in the Atlantic. We'll take them from North Carolina, New York, you know, Cape Cod, wherever we can catch these things. So I hope everyone's happy. We're expanding that to bonito, and we're also looking at the eDNA and potentially some work with some state partners on redfish DNA. And this is really cool. This is really cool stuff. And I'm probably the wrong person to describe it. But one of the things that these DNA scientists can do is find a spawning aggregation of fish and get, you know, let's say 1,000 fin clips, and that's just an estimate, get 1,000 fin clips from that spawning aggregation, and then come back in 6 months and get 1,000 fin clips from the young of the year, and look for those parent offspring matches. And that ratio of parent offspring matches will give you a pretty darn good estimation of population size. So we're looking to kind of supplement those stock assessments for redfish with this called marked recapture DNA to help the scientists manage these fish better.
Hey,
So,
Tony, can I ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
That sort of that came up along the way. So
yeah,
one thing is, you know, this huge issue of conservation equivalency, right? So the notion that states can manage, you know, the stocks of fish, particular species, in ways that are state specific, even though these fish migrate across states and don't really care about what state they're in. They don't have a license plate, right?
yeah.
So with the Albie project, I know, you know, one of the things that we as light tackle anglers have debated for a long time was like, well, like, are the albies in the New York, New England area the same group of fish that are in, forget about like the Mediterranean, are they the same fish that are, in
They are the
Hartman's
same
Island?
fish that are in North Carolina, and the
And so
same.
do we know,
Yeah.
so how did the fin clipping stuff help us to understand that? And how does the genetic research help us to understand that we actually need to manage across a broader
So it's really, it's really interesting. Mass DMF in relation to strike. So in relation to false albacore, the basis of the study, it was not easy. So we were full bore with the acoustic tagging, and we worked out the parameters of the fin clips, and it was tough. So the parameters were within 4 days, we had to activate guides in Cape Cod, North Carolina, and New York to go out and get as many clips from albies in that 4-day period in October in the Atlantic. So like, North Carolina is called the graveyard of the Atlantic, right? That's it for a very good reason. If anyone's ever gone out of Oregon Inlet, you can never question why North Carolina is called the graveyard of the Atlantic. It is the sketchiest inlet. Anyway, to organize all of this, cross your fingers, pray to God in heaven that the albies are there all on those 3 locations all at once, get the fin clips and go. What we found from the research is they're all the same genetic stock, which is fascinating. So conversely, when you look at striped bass, very similar to, so false albacore are clearly a broadcast spawner. They all just get together and boom, brought, out in the middle of the ocean, boom. We don't know where they spawn, but in the currents, we literally know nothing about the fish. We're learning more, obviously. We know that striped bass go back to their natal rivers. So they have such site fidelity. That means that like they're born in the Potomac, they go back to the Potomac. It's very strong. It's a high 90% for the tagged fish that have got acoustic tags, and we can watch them just swim right up the bay, make that left turn into the Potomac. That's where they were born. Based on the research that Mass DMF is doing right now, and it's not complete, there's about 6 different genetic stocks of striped bass just in our coastal stock. That doesn't even include like Roanoke, Albemarle Sound, Nova Scotia, all separate genetic stocks. So but they all go to the same place. They can watch those fish from the Potomac and the Chop Tank and the Chesapeake Gauge, boop, go right up to Cape Cod like clockwork, almost to the day, to the week of prior years. So conservation equivalency, the good news is conservation equivalency is probably going to go away in May, because if y'all don't remember, on page 14,022 footnote sub A option 12B dash 950,000, they said that conservation equivalency would stay in place until they had to change the regulations. Well, we looked at the numbers from National Marine Fisheries Service, and this whole rebuilding plan was based on a fishing mortality rate of 0.14. So the target is 0.17, the threshold is 0.20. Since the stock recovered in 1995, we have never been below the threshold. We've always been at 0.20 or higher fishing mortality. And when we went to the slot limit, that was during the COVID years. Those numbers came out abnormally low. We know the data was a little bit corrupted from COVID. They weren't allowed to do face-to-face surveys. It came out at 0.14, and it wasn't a shell game. It wasn't because they were trying to pull the wool over our eyes. It was because when they mapped the rebuilding plan, they only had 2 years to go off of, because we'd only had a slot limit for 2 years. And that's 2020 and 2021. And we knew it was crap data, but we used it anyway. And that's why we were incredibly concerned, Lou, that it was going to be abnormally low, and it is. We killed about 1 million more fish in 2022 than we did in 2020 or 2021. Regulations are going to change.
So let me ask you about that, Tony, because that's a great point. And then I want to get to sort of like, we don't have a lot of time left. So I want to keep it focused
Yeah.
on what you talk about.
Yeah, and I'll have a
priorities.
and I'll have a quick
where we
question
wanna
too
go
after
from there.
the.
Yeah, but just because I know this is top of mind for folks too, Tony and Blaine, is, a lot of us here in the Northeast who are striped bass fishermen, we're really bent out of shape about this commercial tag sharing proposal from the Atlantic States Marine Fishery Commission. And some folks, and I'm just going to be really incendiary and controversial here and say, representing a lot of folks, that are we not being strident enough about all of this? The fact that we have a decline in the striped bass population, and at the same time, an organization that has the ability and the authority to, sort of make the regulations around striped bass fishery, is proposing that we allow commercial tags to be shared across state lines when we know that these fish don't obey state boundaries. Like, what is ASGA's position on that? And what is it, how do we sort of figure out how we orient ourselves with respect to ASMFC?
So look, it's about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. I guess that's the ASGA position on it. Like, look, there's science and there's policy and they're intertwined. And it's just, it is piss poor public policy when you're trying to rebuild a stock to open up the barn doors. And it doesn't matter if it's just 300,000 fish. It's that outward facing persona, and it doesn't pass the smell test. And I mean, I'll give you an example, right? Like, you look at, this is what kind of ticked us off about it. If you go back to addendum 6, we had to take an 18% reduction. And, this is the kind of chicanery that goes on at those meetings. They slipped in that they would take the reduction off the quota, not the harvest, for commercial fishermen. And so if they're not maximizing their quota and they have to take a reduction off their harvest, I mean, they're taking the reduction off the quota, not the harvest, they're not really getting an 18% reduction. And then in the Chesapeake Bay in particular, they knocked it down to 1.8%, and they put the whole reduction on the shoulders of the recreational community. So they took no reduction, none. And then they come back and say, well, we want to maximize harvest. And, the truth is Delaware's been complaining about this for years. And the other hard truth is that these quotas are based on like numbers from the commercial quotas are based on numbers from like the 1970s. And it needs to be updated. And the real deal is, it needs to go to a reallocation process. And nobody wants to do that, because that's like
reallocation, meaning there are some states that probably are under quota.
Yeah. So what that means is it's like Thunderdome, that they just put every state in a room that commercial fishes, and they're like, all right, whoever walks out of here, you get the quota. I mean,
Without raising the overall quota.
Yeah, it's they just fight. It's just a fight. It's just an ugly situation. Nobody really wins. So they were trying to do these commercial quota transfers because North Carolina hasn't been catching any fish because we killed them all. So, rather than hey, let's bring the stock back, they're like, hey, there's 290 something thousand pounds of quota over there. Let me have it. And it's just, again, it doesn't pass the smell test. The commercial sector is not doing their part in rebuilding the stock like the rec sector is trying to do. And this is something where we all have to do this together, and figuring out how to maximize the quota is not how you do that.
Yeah.
So
got it. So you would say that ASGA's position is that is not a policy that we would advocate, and that we need to protect the striped bass population, even though there's lots of different issues across multiple species, but that's something that we want to rectify.
Look, their only focus, when Lou, we do this every day. And like I mentioned the science portion. We don't have the budget to do science on albies, and we're like, I'll raise the money and we'll do
Yeah.
it, and then we'll
Right.
give it to you. So like you hear that, and then you think about all the time that they have occupied with these scientists and statisticians to look at this commercial quota issue, multiple meetings, countless hours, huge amount. And it's like, is now really the time? Is this, you know what I mean? If you're so constrained and you have such little budget and that's all that you tell us, is this really what you should be working on? 300,000 pounds of fish for, frankly, a lot of folks who are doing it part-time.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't scream to me that you're zeroed in on rebuilding this stock.
Yeah.
It's just bad. It's just a bad look. It's a
So
bad
Tony,
look.
with very little time left, and I know I'm guilty of having created a detour on this issue, but
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about how this community can help.
Where's my
the work
last
that you're doing.
slide? You there, buddy?
Tom will pull it up.
Nice. So look, none of this is free. Everything y'all, do you have any idea how much it costs to do a DNA study? Any idea? It is as expensive as you think it is. It's crazy. Each one of these ones is a little bit different. None of them are cheap. So like, look, we did some road shows and stuff. We tried to get a whole bunch of folks to see us face to face and get to know us as people, because we're kind of, this is such a regional fishery. You kind of have your own leadership kind of in each area. So we ran around, we did these road shows, but we're not going to ask you to go to a banquet. We don't hit you real hard on Giving Tuesday. And the way that we work is science education and advocacy. And we try to come up with innovative ways for people to contribute. So, for example, if y'all want to help out with the Albie and now Bonito project, I put a link up here. You can buy one of the shirts for $250. No, a Sims shirt does not cost $250 because Sims donated those shirts to us, and every penny of that $250 is going to go to the project. Right. And that's just a way, it's a cool way for you, to kind of be out there fishing or go to the bar with your friends afterwards, have that shirt on, and folks know that this is what you care about. And every penny went to that project. You're essentially, the tags are about $350. So you're almost covering the cost of one tag when you buy that. We just thought it was a good price point. And, the other thing is we're C3. So whatever you donate to us is tax deductible, which is pretty flippin' cool. And there's a lot of different ways that you can support the Guides Association. I put that link in there too. And we're gonna kind of rinse and repeat and keep doing this. And if y'all care about, bonito more than you care about albies, we'll come up with that bonito shirt. We're gonna come up with our redfish gear. When stripers have a ton of science on them. I'm sure at some point here in the near future, we're going to get a report from Mass DMF. We're going to see some gaps, and they're going to have recommendations probably where more science needs to be conducted. And maybe we'll start a striper campaign with a little bit of science, and y'all can donate to that. But, instead of just giving money and it goes into this amorphous, association, and you're kind of like, I wonder where that went. We're very specifically, we're giving you an a la carte menu of what you care about and what you want to support. Mike is so funny, man. An only fish account instead of like an OnlyFans account. This is my board member, guys, from Connect. This is our board leadership. That's a good idea, Mike. So yeah, we're giving y'all a menu to absolutely direct your funds to what you care about the most. And the other thing that I would say, like in the chat and in the Q&A, and I know we're running out of time, we do have Blane on here, who's kind of like the Picasso of fly tying in the world right now. So if anyone has any questions with Blane on like specific flies or, hey man, what do you like for Blaine's got some sick albie flies, sick striper, bluefish, redfish. He spends a lot of time redfish in the bay, kind of in my neck of the woods. We have a pretty darn good fishery now for redfish. He exploits that. He's getting good at it, got a new skiff. So before we go, man, just I don't want anyone to feel like they've heard me just babble about stupid policy stuff and they wanted to actually ask Blaine about fishing. So I want to kind of open that up too.
Yeah,
Tony,
Blaine, man, tell us how we can. I mean, you are a legend in fly tying and fly fishing. How can we connect with you, and how can we make sure we're staying in touch with what you're up to?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've really enjoyed listening to Tony. He's such a wealth of knowledge, and I've learned so much from him. Uh, for me, flyers are not worth anything if you don't have anything to cast to, right? So, I think he is definitely our advocate, and he does so much stuff that people don't realize. Until I really joined this organization and kind of saw how things went, I couldn't appreciate what he did, and it's tireless. So Tony, he deserves a lot. He goes through a lot. He does a lot for everybody. He's doing it. So I do want to make sure everybody knows that about him. It's super important. It's when we started trying to get some, just to get a little bit of signatures done for this whole project with the Albie thing, man, it was really shocking how hard it was to get the signatures that we needed to try to get what we wanted to have happen. And I was really surprised. And, Tony's been living this for years. So I think one thing I need to talk about before I even talk about what I do. I mean, it's so insignificant compared to what really what Tony's doing and what ASGA is doing. Is just, we have to really, if you love what your fishery is, no matter where you are in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, South Gulf, even West Coast, we have to stand up for what we really love. And you got to just take that extra 5 minutes to go sign these petitions and really have your voice heard. It's in my opinion, that is the most important thing we can do as anglers right now. I mean, we're really in a crucial point from what I can see from Louisiana, South Carolina. I mean, I could get into stuff like stocking fish. That's a Band-Aid on our fisheries. It's not a way to, I mean, I don't know. Tony may not like me talking about some of this stuff, but it's a Band-Aid, like
we are very anti hatchery. Blaine is seen, South Carolina has a pretty robust hatchery for redfish. They're starting to do it in Florida, and they're starting to do it in Texas. And what we've seen through that marked DNA recapture in a lot of those states is those fish very rarely make it to adulthood. They're just not built like the natural fish. So it kind of artificially inflates fishing pressure and fishing mortality, and it's harder for those native fish to survive. So you may go out and be stoked that you catch a whole bunch of little redfish, but it ain't doing the resource any good. So we are very anti-stocking. You will never see us promote stocking for striped bass. It's a terrible situation. And Blaine's right. If you love this stuff, you better fight for it. That would be my message to all of y'all is look, we got our asses kicked more than we win. But Lou and I had a talk about this the other day, and I look at this stuff through like a military eye, and it's the long game. And I got to tell you, we're going to win. The bad folks who push the bad policy that are against conservation, shit, half of them are coming to the meetings with their diabetic socks on with crutches. They're you know, they're 80 pounds overweight, 75 years old. And I'm just looking at them like, there ain't no chance I'm going before you, buddy. Like we're, you know what I mean? We're going to win. We have the younger generation on our side, but my point is we can't lose anymore. Right. We gotta draw that line in the sand before we start taking it back. And just we're holding the line right
Yeah.
now. And that's
That's my
the
Tony,
boy,
best that
Tony.
we can do.
Tony,
Yeah, we're holding the line, man.
Listen,
Tony,
this,
wait,
Hold on, Dave. I think David had something funny
yeah,
to
go ahead,
say. Hold on.
David.
Tony and Blaine, you guys bring up such great points. And speaking for both me and Lou here at Masters of the Fly, we've really been, we've taken some pride in our first broadcasts of each season having you guys on board, because you've really, lit a fire under some of the people who come and attend. And we've sent out emails to get people to sign these things, go to the hearings. We're really, we're trying to help as best we can, but it's true. If people don't get out there and make their voice heard, like you guys are asking us to, then we're losing the battle. So,
Yep.
You guys, thank you so much. And Blaine, just on a personal note, I'm a big fan of your fly tying. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. And I don't want to make any of this tonight about me. I've been very fortunate to be mentored by some of the greatest fly designers, fly anglers that there has ever lived. But I know Lefty, we talked about him earlier. I know he would want us to fight the good fight. I want to make sure that like I said, grinding it out every day, like right now, muskie fishing, it's a grind. And every day you wake up, you got a couple shots every day to catch a fish for your client. And I know how it is for all these other guides out there and all these other anglers that love what they do and get that rare opportunity not to be at work and have that great day on the water. But, I want everybody to be able to see great days in the future. And I think the only way we could do that is fight for what we know and what we know can happen, especially us at seeing the great days, seeing fisheries at their best or in their top percentile. I even had some clients last week when I had a client from Texas last week that we were fishing, and I have my phone in the boat listening to this striped bass thing with trying to do that transfer of quota stuff. I mean, I'm listening and they're fine with it. And they mean, we're fishing for muskies in fresh water, but I'm on the side with the speaker on, listening to these people deciding on our future of our fisheries. And it's really, it's hard sometimes when you hear some of the stuff they're doing and you wake up the next day and you got to put your boots back on. And, I'll have these conversations with Tony on my way to my next client. And it is frustrating. I can't iterate enough how important it is for everybody to really pay attention. Don't kind of let it go. I mean, take that extra mile and make sure that we are there for ASGA, and therefore it doesn't even matter if it's even in Florida with everything that's going on down there. I mean, we have to pay attention to all of it because there's a lot of there's a lot of greed out there. You know what I mean? And that's the thing I've seen. And whether it's right or wrong, me saying this right now, it's unbelievable how they could take things that I see on a daily basis, being on the water in different fisheries, and try to spin it into being something totally opposite of what the reality is. It's really frustrating. And that's why, I mean, Tony told me it's about, 3 yards and a cloud of dust, just kind of doing that analogy with football. And if we get a first down here and there, that's a victory. But I mean, it's a long battle and we got to be there. And I'm there for the long haul for sure, because, it's frustrating. I'm not saying all fisheries are dying. And I hope they don't. I hope, here in a few years, everything is great. But, I think it's more important to be proactive, and that's kind of what's going on with the albies. I think we should be proactive with everything, because if we don't, there's going to be some way they're going to find a way to kind of move forward and take over this, and you'll see that decline. I mean, I've been on the bay and seen just giant schools of menhaden just doing their thing and having cobia feeding through them. I mean, nature doing what it's supposed to do, and you see one of these spotter planes fly over, and then next thing you
Over.
know,
Game
the
over.
next day,
Yeah.
it's over. No more
Game
fish.
over. I'll tell you,
Everything's gone.
Blaine, I'm sitting here. Lou, I know y'all are like real time conscious order of operations guys, but I want to say one thing so everyone just understands this before y'all let us go. There was a point in time with me and Blaine where we were definitely under 30 years old, and Lefty had us somewhere talking, doing something, and there was like a gleam in his eye. And Blaine brought it up, and I swear to God, he knew that Blaine and I would go different routes in the fly fishing world, but there'd always kind of be that connection, and we'd be able to kind of build off each other. And like, we've seen our kids born and businesses go down the shitter and other ones flourish, and, just up and downs of life and everything. And Lefty's been gone a while now, but this is the truth, man. You kind of look at me and I'm a little haggard and probably not the most easily approachable person, and kind of no BS. And Blaine's been on the water for 32 years, and, his big persona. And it is so hard for us to talk about our history together because we miss Lefty so much. And he was something. He was the thing that upset me and Blaine the most when Lefty died was all these jerks on social media saying what good friends they were with him, and like we didn't say nothing. And it really upset us because like even in the poor guy's death, there were still people trying to be famous from saying that they knew him. And me and Blaine knew, along with Klauser and Popovics and countless other people, that he had taken under his wing. And all I can say is, man, a lot of nice things were said about me, but this candle was lit 100 years ago, right, with Lefty. And this is really, it's crazy when you think about like the legacy that man left, and his ability to look into the future and put all of these pieces on the chessboard and put them into play, because he really truly in his heart, he cared about the resource, and he cared about getting kids into fly fishing. And he knew if there were no fish, that there ain't gonna be any fishermen. And you kind of, you look back at that at the long haul, and as much as our jobs suck sometimes, you all you can do is just be grateful and consider how fortunate your life is that you had that incredible greatness kind of touch you and lift you up. And that's what I'll say. That's kind of how I'll finish my little rah-rah speech, is we all stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us. We would be nothing without them. And I think we're all just trying to keep promises that we made, and do a lot of times, what we hope they would be proud of, because they did so much for us. So, anyone who supports any of our conservation work, that's how far this legacy goes back. It's not me, it's not Blaine, it's not our board members, our officers. It goes back generations into a very rich fly fishing conservation history, and we're all a part of it. So that doesn't give you something to fight for. I don't know what does. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not pulling this out to be like a goofball, but Blaine knows what this is, right? Lefty gave me this a little bit before. This is his back scratcher that he carried everywhere with him. And people have like books and this shit from Lefty, and this thing sits right up here, and every time I have a lousy day, I look at it and I think about him in frickin' World War II, and his dad dying when he was a kid, and feeding his family on catfish he trot lined in Frederick, Maryland. I mean, our life is a piece of cake compared to that man. So it's kind of like I look at that thing and I say, man, get off the crying train and get your ass in gear and dust yourself off and get to work, because our life's a hell of a lot easier than his ever was. and he was a lot nicer guy than I am. So a lot of lessons to learn. So that's it. That took me 2 minutes, Lou. Don't be upset with me. You know,
Tony, we
Wow.
love it. Thank you, you and Blane. Thank you so much. I mean, I can't imagine a world where we didn't have you advocating for the fishery that we all benefit from. And, you know, it takes a lot more than is apparent even tonight in terms of what you folks do every single day, and your passion, your dedication on behalf of all of us as beneficiaries of this fishery is something that isn't lost on us. And I mean, you two are legends. You could be doing any number of things, but the fact that you've dedicated yourselves to helping all of us protect our fishery for future generations is something that we really appreciate. And I hope everyone on this Zoom tonight will make a substantial contribution to ASGA and support the organization, because you really are, you know, our advocates, and we all benefit from it. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Blane, not to put you on the spot, but as a new guy to the conversation with the ASGA and Masters of the Fly, I hope we can get you on next season for a tying session, because we have an incredible audience of folks who, you know, are super obsessed about saltwater fly tying and fly tying in general. And I think it'd be great to have you on board. And I won't ask for a commitment tonight, but I would love to have you on board to do something for this crew. I think it would mean a lot to them.
Yeah, Blane, we would love to have you. And Tony, again, I want to thank you. Tonight really revealed a lot of great information that our viewers and listeners are going to certainly, I hope, pay attention to. Just moving on briefly, I just want to remind everybody about the links where people can send you guys money. We posted it earlier tonight, and if we could repost it right now, that would be great.
Yeah, and what I heard was for
$300,
$300. I mean, you can fund a
$250
tag for albums.
There it is.
Yeah, $250 for the
Yeah.
shirt, and that's a little bit, you know, tags about $330. So
Incredible.
we're gonna start buying.
Lou
those
and I are
tags
buying a
in
tag.
May.
Yeah,
doing it
we're all
together.
in. We're all in.
Yeah, we're all in. And also, just to keep going on, please, people, watch this rebroadcast on our YouTube. Send it out to other people so they know what's going on. It's really, really important. You know, let's pull out all the stops. I had an Albie question, but Tony, I'll call you about it later.
Well, and Ken, I know Ken had a question.
Ken
too.
had his hand up.
Yeah, Ken, what's your? I'm gonna unmute you here.
He's still muted.
Oh no! Look, no, I didn't have a question. I must have hit it by accident.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And
David, ask the Albie question, because somebody else may have had it.
Yeah, go for it, David.
I
Okay,
feel
well,
bad. I haven't. Yeah.
Here's my Albie question before we go, and then I have one other little bit of business to cover. You talked about you talked about the return rate at 90%, which kind of blew my mind. And I was thinking, one, what were you expecting? And two, since you had a 90% return rate, what can you extrapolate from that when we talk about mortality? Because people always say, well, we're killing more albies than we're catching, basically. But when you get a 90% return rate, I think you can extrapolate a lot.
Good question, actually. Really.
Yeah,
good
that's
question.
it. That's a killer question, and I'm going to answer it honest, transparent, just like I do everything else. So, you know, there was a little bit of speculation with the scientists who, by the way, a lot of them are fishermen. So like, they're not just like sitting in their office at New England Aquarium, you know, polishing their degrees. They actually they take any excuse possible to get out on the water and catch fish. They actually love fishing. They're really good people. It's okay. Answers got a couple of different levels to it.
I thought so.
What did I expect?
Mhm.
I was praying to God for 60%. Kept me up at night. But from the time that we put that last tag in to the time they downloaded the information, I think I slept 2.5 hours, because there were a lot of naysayers out there, and they're like, they're all going to die. You're so stupid. Blah. You know what? Fortune favors the bold. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't try something, you just don't know. So it didn't simulate true catch and release, because we shoved them in a parking cone, stuck a hose up their mouth, cut them open. And, so this year coming up, we're going to try and make it a little bit more realistic to a normal release. All I can say is 90% far exceeded anything that we ever could have hoped for, and or thought or was even possible. So I think I think the message is, it's a really oily fish, tons of capillaries like running through the meat, not like white meat like a striper. So if you just put a pinprick in the thing, it's going to squirt blood out. And I think that we judge that by being like, oh man, that thing's not going to live, and coming from someone who's spent most of their adult life with a cut on their head, or getting their head, some type of, when you cut your head, you bleed like a stuck pig, right? When I cut my hand, my foot, my leg, my arm, not nearly as bad. And I think it has to do with that whole vascular system in those like little scombrids, the little, the small mackerel, the tuna, everything, where we just make that assumption. And the only thing I can tell you is they're a hell of a lot tougher than I thought they were. Still treat them with care and all that kind of stuff.
Great.
But I think they're a hell of a
Love
lot
that.
tougher than we
That's
thought they
awesome.
were.
Hey,
That's
we
really
have
good
we have
stuff.
a hand raised from
Hand
J.R.
raised.
Hall.
Hey guys, good evening. I hope you guys can hear me all okay.
We got
Tony,
you.
Blaine, Lou, thank you guys so much for coming on, spending some time and going a little bit more in depth on exactly what you guys work on day in and day out. I'm a Cape Cod guy from Texas originally, but washed ashore here about 20 years ago. And to hear all the Albie project, especially being out in Nantucket Sound, out near Monomoy, watching you guys run around, find the schools of fish when we're out there just doing the same thing, it was phenomenal watching that take place in our own backyard. I know that there has come to light recently, just for our region, decommission of a Pilgrim nuclear power plant, and Holtec potentially releasing up to 1 million+ gallons of radioactive water coming out
into JR. I just want you to know that we got your back, and we're going to engage on that issue.
That's huge. And it's the same thing, we're trying to do what we can through our own advocacy groups here on the Cape, South Shore, Boston, North Shore, areas like that.
JR, my email is just Tony@saltwaterguidesassociation.org. You're more than welcome to email me now. We planned on it. We just wanted to get through this commission meeting last week, and I'm by no means am I trying to cut you off, but we've been watching that issue. It's very concerning to us. I know that your Senator Markey, just came out with a pretty powerful statement about his opposition to releasing that water. And we had a friend who had a meeting with that office on Friday, and I'm going to catch up with them on Monday. I talked with her just before she had the call with Markey's office at like 11 a.m. on Friday. She kind of gave me a heads up on that. We're going to circle up on Monday. You're more than welcome to email me, but we have every intention on lending our voice to that issue, because that's some pretty serious stuff. You guys have an absolutely incredible resource up there that cannot be messed with. I mean, it's like, compared to where I live in the Bay, that's like the Garden of Eden, man. We got to,
especially when we're coming around to Albie project too. We can't ruin the fishery. We still got good data to go out there, grab.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure we're keeping it up.
Right. Our tags are going to be glowing, man, if they get away with that. But please email me, JR, because we're going to engage on that.
All right,
Lou, thank you so much for taking my question. Thank you, guys.
JR, thank you for the question. That was an excellent question. It is time to wrap up. Everybody, don't forget to go to our Facebook page, our YouTube page. The 26th of March it is. wait, I got to double check because I want everyone to, sorry, February 26th, Andy Mill. Don't miss it.
Yeah, so that's
And,
a big
and
one.
Blaine and Tony, I expect you guys to be there.
He's about as awesome of an angler. Y'all have a pretty good guest on the 26th, because he's as good or better of an angler as he was a skier. I mean,
Yeah.
that boy can catch a tarpon, man. Like, it's amazing. He's an artist.
Yeah, he really is. And Lou and I are so excited to have him on. And the rest of the schedule is posted for everybody. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, panelists, all of you guys who tune in for every episode. We can't thank you enough. Again, we're humbled by your participation. And
Yeah, and David,
until
before
next
we
time.
sign off too, I just
Oh.
want to say, like, one of the things that we've been working on with ASGA also
That's right.
is a fish logging app called GotOne. You know, it's a free app
There.
that allows you to log your catches, and you know,
Lou, can I say one thing about it?
Yeah, go for it,
I was
Tony.
waiting for this slide.
yeah.
So I want to frame this. Hardly anybody's left yet, and thank y'all for hanging on. So Lou came to us probably 6, 7, 8 months ago. This kind of falls under the veil of what Lou does professionally. The guy he said, I'd like to donate my time, develop something that could help out with science. So this is not just like your everyday, like, hey, look at my fishing app. This is Fish Brain Part 2. This is about as cool as the other side of the pillow. It's so robust that we have such faith in it at the Guides Association that we have reached out to the Cyanid Stock Assessment Committee, which that's Red Drum. And I mentioned before that Red Drum stock assessment is a simulation, and they have reviewed this app and partnered with the Guides Association to start collecting very specific data on redfish releases. The good news for the Northeast is, believe it or not, bluefish have the same data constraints that redfish have. So the data that we're collecting for redfish, the way that Lou has taken the time and generously programmed this app, it's going to overlay to bluefish. So we're going to start working with the bluefish technical committee. So the neat thing about this app is that when you log certain species, and believe me, false albacore and Atlantic bonito will be on here shortly, it's going to add to the body of science. And then on the back end, it overlays all of this incredible data for a personal fishing log. Lou is very careful with privacy. No one will ever see your fishing log but you. But you know, it'll tell you anything you want to know. What was the moon phase, current speed, Secchi depth, chlorophyll level, you know, you name it, wind speed. And it kind of creates that fishing log that we all want to have, but are all too ADHD fishermen to actually do it on a consistent level. So I'll just put it to you this way. This isn't a gimmick. It's the first time in my 20+ career of doing this with just a mountain of failed apps to try and collect rec fishing data. It's the first time that a recreational fishing group has partnered with a private entity, Lou, and GotOne, and convinced multiple technical committees in multiple jurisdictions to start using this data to collect information to enhance stock assessments. So
Yeah.
I couldn't be more proud of Lou and the work that and the incredible knowledge that he has and his team has in this field, and to turn that into something that could benefit you as a fisherman with your log, and then benefit science on the back end. And I think we're probably going to launch this for redfish coming up here, probably in the next redfish the next 60 days, probably bluefish the next 90 days. We're going to work with our partners, our big sponsors, whether it's, you know, whoever. I mean, seems like a lot of people want to work with us now, but we'll do something, you know, whoever records the most catches in a month wins a free pair of coasters. I don't know. We haven't figured it out yet, but our sponsors are always there for us. And this is that whole science, education, advocacy. The more we can give the managers, the more valuable we are, the better decisions they're going to make. We give them the data. We're in the driver's seat. So
Tony, that is all great. And just so you know, I'm sort of not that great at tech, and I was kind of Lou Yen's
stop it.
Guinea
Stop
pig.
it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it, David.
If I was able to figure this out and do it, everybody can do this. It's such a simple, easy app to use.
Lou, you're recording this, right?
So
You're recording this.
There's no reason. Thank you, Tony. There's no reason why everybody shouldn't have this in their back pocket. It is so fun and easy to use. That's all I have to say.
Oh my God. I think I hurt myself. That was awesome. I hope so.
Well, thank you all. You all embarrassed me with that, but this really has been a labor of love, and we can work together to make things better.
And Lou, listen, a whole bunch of people just installed it. So listen, y'all, okay? This is the stage where we want your feedback.
Yeah, right.
It ain't perfect, right? We're developing it. The better it is, the better it's going to be for everyone. So, send us messages. If you have any suggestions, we beg for your feedback. We don't want it. We're begging for it because we have to make this as good as possible, so these scientists use the data and start managing our fisheries better. So please, any feedback you have is going to help all parties involved.
I'm watching all you guys downloading it right now. It's totally cool. This is like an infomercial right now.
Add largemouth bass for Ken, Lou.
Yeah,
all right, Ken, you got it, buddy.
With all this, I do think we need to sign off. I, for one, haven't eaten dinner yet, and I'm kind of hungry. And again, tune in February 26th, our YouTube channel, our Facebook. Send me and Lou messages. We love getting your messages and answering you guys. We cannot wait to see all you again in a couple weeks. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lou.
Thanks,
and David.
everybody. Thank you, Tony and Blaine.
Thank you, guys.
Blaine, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys so much.